I thought my roommate and I were just friends, but when my ex-girlfriend tried to expose him, I realized I was in the middle of a crazy mystery that would change my life forever. I, 22M, have a roommate, let's call him Alex M23, who moved in about 6 months ago. I honestly never considered Alex may be trans, not that I would care if he was, but that's not the issue. He is a short guy, and probably under 165 cm 55, has a lot facial hair, muscles, and looks a lot like a short Henry Cavill emo. No one I know has ever brought up this idea before. I've had my friends and family at our apartment before. This is really the part that gets to me, because my mom is extremely against any gay people, and if she sensed anything was up, she would have caused problems right away. Alex and I get along. We're polite, but not really friends. He's quiet, but super polite, always pays rent on time, helps with chores, and even shares his cooking with me. I appreciate having him around, especially because my last 3 roommates were each their own horror story. The issue came up when my girlfriend, let's call her Sarah F28, came over one day. Alex was shirtless. To clarify, I forgot to tell Alex that she was coming over, and she noticed the scars on his chest. After that, she was quiet and short with me her entire stay there. When she got home, she blew up my phone asking why I had a female living with me. I was confused and asked what she was on about. She says that she knows that his scars are from top surgery and that he is short, so he has to be trans and a born female. I tried to explain that even if Alex is trans or a born female, that there is no way I'd be attracted to him, because to any person who looked at him, you would see a freaking guy. Plus, he's respectful and doesn't cause drama like my last roommates, which she knows about. Just to be clear, I honestly still have no idea if Alex is even trans. I Googled it, and those scars could be from some other surgery, like heart surgery or gynecomastia. And I really don't have an argument for him being short, but there is a lot of short men. At first, Sarah wanted me to just ask Alex if he was trans, which why the fuck would I do that? Or give her his last name so she can run a background check. I said no to both. Then she said this was a violation of trust, and that if I didn't either find out that Alex is trans and kick him out, or just kick him out, that she would have to reevaluate things, basically threatening to break up. I said I don't do ultimatums and that we're done. Since then, she's been messaging me every single day for over 2 weeks, even after I blocked her on everything because she wouldn't leave me alone, pissed that I wouldn't do this small thing for her. She ranges from, "Are you fucking him? Let's just talk. Why can't you at least give me closure and ask him?" to the most recent, her telling our mutual friend about the situation. Our friend wants nothing a part of this shit show. I didn't feel bad at first, but after talking about it online, I've had some people say I should have just asked my roommate if he was indeed trans just to keep the peace, or that I shouldn't have essentially picked my roommate who I've only had for about 6 months over my girlfriend of 5 years. I wonder if I am being unreasonable. I legitimately do not see how any straight dude could find Alex attractive personally, but maybe I should have done something just to keep the peace. TLDR. My now ex-girlfriend thinks that my roommate is trans, told me to find out for sure or kick him out. I refused and broke up with her. Aita? Update 1. Alright, so here's what happened. After the breakup, I was mentally exhausted from Sarah's constant messages, calls, and just general invasion of my life. Blocking her felt like a relief, for about a day. I thought things would calm down, I'd have some time to get my head on straight, but I was completely wrong. Sarah just took things to a whole new level. One evening, I came home to find Alex looking a bit uncomfortable, just sitting on the couch. I asked if everything was all right, and he gave me this tight smile saying he'd gotten a weird message from someone claiming to know him and his situation. My stomach immediately dropped, because I knew where this was going. Turns out, Sarah had found Alex on social media. She was trying to reach him through every avenue she could find, and her messages were filled with accusations and this wild conspiracy theory about him being trans, lying about it to me, and apparently tricking me into living with a woman, I was mortified. Alex and I had never even talked about anything personal, let alone anything remotely related to gender or sexuality. And even if we had, it wouldn't have mattered, because it's none of my business or anyone else's. I apologized profusely, telling Alex about the situation and how Sarah had been acting, and that we'd broken up because she'd wanted me to evict him. Alex just nodded, taking it in like a champ, but I could see he was uncomfortable. Who wouldn't be? He asked if there was anything he needed to worry about legally, and I said no, that I'd take care of it. He just said he'd appreciate if I kept things as private as possible and went back to his room. I couldn't shake how bad I felt. Here's this guy who's been nothing but respectful, who's always kept to himself, and now he's getting harassed by my ex because she has some twisted obsession. I felt like an idiot for not seeing it coming, and I was angry. More than I'd been in a long time. I figured it was time to put an end to it once and for all. So I reached out to a mutual friend of ours, someone I thought Sarah might listen to. I explained what had been going on, laying it all out so they could understand how obsessive she'd been. This friend was shocked, to say the least. They hadn't known we'd even broken up, let alone that she was harassing my roommate. They promised they'd talk to her, make her realize she was out of line, and get her to back off. That night, I felt a small weight lift off my shoulders. Maybe this would finally be the end of it. The next day, though, I woke up to a notification from my building's management office. They wanted to discuss a complaint about me and Alex. Apparently, someone had called them, claiming that Alex and I were running some kind of scam to sublet our apartment to a non-resident. I was stunned. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was Sarah. It had to be her. No one else would know or even care enough to make a report like that. I spent the next hour talking to the management office, explaining that I was on the lease, Alex was on the lease, and no, we weren't running a scam. I had to show them documents to prove it, but thankfully, they let it go. It wasn't the hassle that bothered me, though. It was the fact that Sarah had escalated things this far. She was literally contacting my building management just to mess with me and Alex. That night, I talked to Alex again, letting him know what was going on, and told him that if he wanted to, I'd help him find a different place where he wouldn't have to deal with any of this drama. I could see the exhaustion on his face. He told me he appreciated it, but that he didn't want to move. He liked the apartment, liked the setup we had, and frankly, didn't see why he should have to leave because of someone else's behavior. He wasn't wrong, and I respected his choice. We both agreed that if Sarah kept it up, we'd look into a restraining order. It felt surreal to be talking about it, but at this point, it was becoming necessary. Then, a few days later, I got a call from my mom. Now, a quick background on my mom. She's not exactly subtle when it comes to voicing her opinions, and I'd been dreading this call since the breakup. Sarah, in her infinite wisdom, had contacted my mom. She'd filled her in on her entire theory about Alex being trans, made it sound like I was being deceived, and even suggested that I was somehow in danger for not knowing the truth. I could barely believe it. My mom, of course, was concerned, and she asked me flat out if what Sarah said was true. She wanted to know if I was safe. I took a deep breath, reminded myself not to lose my temper, and calmly told her that nothing Sarah said was true, that Alex was a perfectly normal guy, and that if Sarah was saying anything different, she was lying. I explained that we'd broken up because she was acting obsessive and irrational, and I needed her to respect my boundaries. To her credit, my mom listened, but I could tell she still had her doubts. That night, Alex and I talked again. I told him about my mom's call, and we both laughed about how ridiculous the whole thing had gotten. He was just my roommate, nothing more, and here we were, dealing with harassment, false accusations, and now even my family was getting pulled in. It was like some twisted sitcom plot, but it was real life, and it was exhausting. A few days later, I noticed something strange. Alex seemed off, not in a bad way, just quieter than usual, which I didn't think was possible. I didn't want to pry, but one evening after dinner, He sat me down and told me he was planning to talk to his family about the situation, get their advice. Apparently, his mom had messaged him out of the blue, asking if he was doing okay, and mentioning that someone had called asking about him. He hadn't told his family much about his life here, and now he felt like he owed them an explanation. My stomach dropped again. I couldn't imagine what that must have been like, getting a random message from your family because your roommate's ex had been snooping around. It wasn't fair to him, and I felt guilty all over again. We talked a bit more, and by the end of it, we'd decided that if Sarah didn't back off soon, we'd go straight to the police. Neither of us wanted to deal with this any longer, and it was clear she wasn't going to stop on her own. That night, I went to bed feeling both relieved and angry. Relieved that I had a plan, but angry that it had to come to this at all. Update 2. All right, this is where everything finally blew up, in the worst and best ways possible. After all the nonsense, Alex and I had both had enough. We decided that if Sarah contacted him or me even once more, we'd go to the police. No hesitation. I was tired of feeling like my life was under surveillance, and Alex deserved way better than to be dragged into this chaos. A couple of days later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Sarah, of course. She'd somehow found a new way to contact me. The text was just as unhinged as the others, except this time she'd gone full conspiracy theorist, claiming that Alex was hiding his real identity and that she was going to expose the truth to everyone if I didn't listen to her. I didn't respond. I just screenshotted the messages, blocked the number, and filed everything away, ready for when we went to the police. That evening, Alex and I went to the police station. The officers took it seriously, especially after I showed them all the messages Sarah had sent, the fake complaints to our building, and how she'd dragged our families into it. They recommended a restraining order, which we both agreed to. I left the police station feeling like I'd finally done something to protect Alex and myself, and I was honestly relieved that it was coming to an end. But then came the plot twist I absolutely didn't see coming. The next day, I got an email from someone with a name I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was spam, but then I opened it, and my jaw hit the floor. The email was from Sarah's ex. He'd found me through some Reddit post, or maybe mutual friends, and had seen Sarah was acting the same way with me as she'd done to him. He warned me that she had a history of obsession and harassment with the people she dated, particularly if she felt like she was losing control over them. He'd gone through almost the exact same thing, except it had ended with her getting caught stalking him and his family after their breakup. After reading this email, everything clicked. I mean, it was like a light bulb going off in my head. It wasn't that Sarah had any real issue with Alex being secretly trans or whatever her story was. It was about control. She just couldn't handle the fact that I'd refused to bend to her demands, and so she'd latched onto Alex, turning him into her enemy, someone she could demonize and blame. She'd used this twisted theory to try and manipulate me because she thought I'd be too scared or too embarrassed to question it. I called Alex and told him about the email, and we both sat there just stunned, realizing we'd gotten roped into something that had absolutely nothing to do with us. All the accusations, harassment, and manipulation had been part of her pattern, her weird obsession with controlling her partners and anyone around them. I forwarded the email to the police to add to our restraining order file, and they agreed it strengthened our case. They assured us they'd have a judge approve it as soon as possible. The next week was blissfully quiet, which was like a breath of fresh air after months of feeling like I was being watched. Alex and I finally went back to our normal routine, laughing about how absurd the whole situation had been. At one point, he even joked that he should write a memoir titled "Living with a Roommate Who Brought a Stalker into My Life." Honestly, after everything, it sounded like a bestseller. We were able to relax again, just existing as roommates without the constant drama looming over us. I finally felt like I had my life back. Then, I got a call from my mom. She told me that Sarah had shown up at her house, ranting about how I was in danger and living with a deceptive roommate. My mom had called the police, and thankfully they showed up and took Sarah away, explaining to her that if she didn't back off, she'd be looking at a serious criminal charge for violating a restraining order. When my mom told me, she sounded both concerned and relieved, and surprisingly, she apologized for believing Sarah's nonsense in the first place. It was a strange conversation, one I hadn't expected, but I could tell she finally understood that Sarah had some serious issues and that I hadn't been exaggerating about the situation. After that incident, I figured that was the last time I'd hear anything about Sarah, and for a while, life went back to normal. Alex and I carried on as roommates, and we actually grew closer after all the chaos. We'd been through so much together that it felt like we were more than just people sharing an apartment. We started hanging out more, going out for drinks, and even introducing each other to our respective friend groups. It was like I'd gained a solid friend, someone who'd had my back through one of the most bizarre and stressful experiences of my life. But then, just when I thought everything was finally behind us, I got a message on social media from an account I didn't recognize. It was Sarah. Again. She was still somehow getting around the restraining order, using fake accounts and burner numbers. Her messages were unhinged, full of paranoia and delusion. She said I'd betrayed her, that Alex had brainwashed me, and that I would regret this. This time, though, I wasn't scared or intimidated. I was just done. I reported the account, blocked it, and forwarded everything to the police. The last update came a week later when I got a call from the detective handling our case. They'd managed to track Sarah down and charge her with harassment and stalking, backed up by all the evidence we'd provided. She was facing fines and even a possible jail sentence. They assured us that with everything she'd done, there was little chance she'd be bothering us again anytime soon. I hung up, feeling like a massive weight had finally lifted. After everything, the nightmare was over. So, that's it. Life is back to normal, and Sarah is finally out of the picture. Alex and I joke about it sometimes. He even calls himself the world's most problematic roommate, even though he's probably the best roommate anyone could ask for. We've both moved on, and honestly, the whole ordeal taught me a lot about boundaries, manipulation, and the importance of sticking up for people, even if it means standing up to someone close to you. Looking back, I don't regret a thing. Not the breakup, not refusing to interrogate Alex, and definitely not kicking Sarah out of my life.